Our next speaker then, he certainly has got a lot of energy. He's come all the way from Marburg in Germany. And Manningtree has had a long connection with Germany through the Frankenberg partnership. I'm not exactly sure how close Marburg is to Frankenberg, but I suspect it's quite close. But maybe Mike Schoeniger, who's going to speak to us now, they have a climate neutral scheme going in that part of the world. So it isn't just Manningtree that's trying to do things. There are communities all over Europe, indeed all over the world, that recognise that we have to do something to tackle this climate crisis. We have to do something to help local biodiversity. So come on, welcome Mike Schoeniger, all the way from Marburg in Germany. Come on, Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And hi, everybody. I'm Mike. I'm from Marburg in Germany, and it's a great pleasure to be back again in the UK. And I'd like to thank, first of all, the organizers of the Earth Festival for this fantastic event, and also for giving me the opportunity to tell you something about what I'm working on back in Germany. So I'm working on a project called the Klimabonus, so it's actually climate bonus. And we're doing this in the region of Burgwald-Eder-Bergland, and it's quite comparable to the region here. So it's so in and around Manningtree, it's a lot of rural area, small cities, small towns and villages, and essentially it's the same back in our region. And Frankenberg, as the twin town of Manningtree, is one of those towns. So the Klimabonus is a model project. It's funded by the National Climate Protection Initiative of the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. So our goals are making the public aware of the importance of climate protection, but also supporting local enterprises, councils, as well as associations and initiatives which are pioneers in the field of climate protection. To achieve these goals, we provide the CO2 calculator on our website. We also participate in information events like the Earth Festival today. We provide information about measures that reduce personal CO2 emissions, but we also offer local CO2 compensation, like agroforesting or the irrigation of bogs. For instance, we irrigated a bog in the Borgwald and prevented it from decomposition. So, and this saved 727 tons of CO2. So, and our approach when we talk about CO2 compensation is a local one, meaning we're not planting somewhere far away in the southern hemisphere or so, but we retain natural CO2 reservoirs in our region where our people live and can easily have a look at what we have done. So furthermore, we also advise councils and enterprises on how they can become climate neutral. This is especially important in the city of Marburg, as the city parliament proclaimed climate emergency in 2019, and Marburg wants to become climate neutral by 2030, which is very ambitious. A first step for the administration of a county or district in order to become climate neutral is of course to know the status quo of the greenhouse gas emissions, but also to be an inspiring example. In this sense, buildings have to be refurbished with regard to energy consumption, cars need to be electrified, and other modes of mobility need to be strengthened, and green energy production needs to be enhanced. However, this will only reduce a small amount of the carbon emissions of a county. So the next step has to be encouraging the remaining actors to make a change. And this could, for instance, be aid programs, for instance, financial support for people who install solar cells on their roofs or garages or balconies, or to install roof insulation. And at this point, we need to address an important question. Who would benefit from such a subsidy and who does not? Of course, the people who conduct such a measure benefit, as they have lower costs, both for the installation but also later because their running costs decrease. The district and county also benefit, as they can reduce CO2 emissions in their territory rather cheaply. But the local enterprises do not necessarily benefit from this. And this is where we at the Klimabonus come into play. We're establishing a local currency in our region, and I'd like to tell you why a local currency is actually good for all stakeholders in a region. But let me first tell you, with one example from Marburg, how it works. So the city of Marburg rewards people who buy an e-bike, so an electric bicycle, a cargo bike, or a bicycle trailer, if the vehicle is bought in a local store. However, it is not distributed in euros, but in our climate vouchers. It's these vouchers, and you can just use them for shopping. And each climate voucher has the same value as €1, and the amount of vouchers that are given to the buyers is dependent on the amount of CO2 that is reduced by the measure. For every 10 kilograms of CO2 that are saved, one climate voucher is given to the buyer. In the case of an e-bike purchase, I calculated with the help of scientific studies that this reduces CO2 emissions by approximately 1,000 kilograms, meaning the buyer would get 100 climate vouchers. And now comes the important point. Where can these vouchers be spent? Our partners who accept this local currency act environmentally friendly and are chosen by us. So one example is a Whole Food store in Frankenberg, and so in Manningtree you also have this Whole Food store. So you will not be able to spend this money on Amazon or other global players, but you can spend this money in local stores within the region you live in. Now you might ask, how is this beneficial? Well, it's advantageous for the economy because the climate vouchers and so the money remains in your region and hence strengthens your local enterprises where you, the people who live here, might work. Because the money does not flow to Amazon or other players who usually don't pay taxes in your country, this also increases the business tax revenue, and that is one reason why local currencies are also advantageous for councils. Besides this business tax revenue, shopping locally also reduces distances and costs. Goods need to be transported. Interim results of our project leader, Christian Gallery, show that local currencies also have a much smaller carbon footprint compared to other currencies like the euro. He found that the carbon footprint of the Chiemgau local currency is 40% smaller compared to the euro. The main reason for this are that partners use green electricity, transportation distances are short, and food and products are produced ecologically. It's also advantageous for climate pioneers who are usually not interested in high profits but in making the world a better place. One example I can give you is the lending shop. Instead of buying machines you usually only need once a year or so, like a drilling machine, you can borrow it either without costs or for only a small fee. Spending your money there strengthens these pioneers, and as a side effect you save space because you don't need to store this equipment all the time. And the climate is protected because it's not necessary to produce more and more stuff. Other examples in this context are second-hand dealers. Using things that already exist is always better than producing new, so repair should always be your first choice. Using local currencies is also advantageous for the people, meaning you, the people who live in and around Manningtree. You support your local businesses, which is good for yourself, your friends or acquaintances who work in these shops, enterprises and so on. Your money stays in your region, which is good because that raises the budget of your district. Hence, more money is available for mobility alternatives, for education, for social aspects. You protect the climate because the routes of transportation are generally shorter, so transport emissions are reduced. And your children and grandchildren will gratefully acknowledge every single kilogram of CO2 that is saved, because every kilogram less means a living environment that's less hot. And if you ask me, it's hot enough already. So if you're interested in things like local currencies, I'd be happy to talk about it with you later at the Pace stall, or next to the Pace stall here in High Street, a few hundred meters. The project Carbon Cutting Essex already points into a similar direction. However, our approach goes beyond this. Despite this local currency approach, we also do a lot of educational work, like information campaigns. So one example is a campaign we're about to start, which deals with the true cost of car ownership. Another example would be information about how you can save energy and how this is not only beneficial for the climate, but also for your wallet. Despite such regular information, we developed a very special and highly entertaining format, which is the Climate Dinner. The idea of the Climate Dinner is the following. Participants get a very vegetarian 3-course menu, which is prepared with regional and seasonal ingredients. Each course is designed to address one of the 3 pillars of the climate bonus. So the first act deals with the topic information, meaning people get in touch with the sources of greenhouse gas emissions and their magnitude. Here people have a look at their own housing conditions, mobility, nutrition and consumption behavior. In the second act, we call it the reduction act, people discuss different ways to avoid and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. For instance, switching to a provider of green electricity is rather easy but saves a lot of CO2. And in Germany this is even more efficient because our electricity mix is quite bad. Other examples would be to eat more seasonal and regional food and less meat, or often use public transportation or the bicycle rather than the car. Finally, the last course deals with the topics of compensation and carbon handprint, and eventually addresses the question what people can do besides their own possibilities. For instance, if your roof is not suitable for photovoltaics, maybe the roof of your neighbor is. So you could encourage your neighbors to install solar cells. Or another option would be you become part of the PACE family and inform people, other people about practical actions for climate and the environment. So you should, however, not imagine the climate dinner like a lecture or something like that. Now the money goes away, but doesn't matter, you cannot spend it here. We work together with an improvisational theater that strongly interacts with the audience, requests, for instance, ideas which will increase your carbon footprint massively. And with these ideas, the actors perform a play which is very individual for every climate dinner. And of course, they do it in a way that is very funny and people are laughing a lot. And if you're interested in organizing a climate dinner yourself, I'm happy to share the concept with you. Just get in touch. So it's something everybody could do. To summarize, what people get when they participate in the climate dinner is fun, really good food, and information about climate protection in a really good mood. And that is the main idea of the climate dinner, communicating climate protection in an enjoyable atmosphere. This is very important because although scientific evidence is dramatic, people usually do not change when they find themselves in some kind of apocalyptic mood, because then they are rather paralyzed and do not know what to do. And it's my firm conviction that getting in touch with the topic of climate protection in a pleasant mood is a key element when you want people to make a change, at least on the individual level. But what I'm telling you this, I mean, the Earth Festival is exactly what I'm talking about. You have a nice atmosphere and everybody's happy and still people get in touch with climate protection. And now on a political level, however, and I won't bother you too much about politics now, but on a political level, we really need ambitious actions in order to preserve this beautiful planet we live on, and that our children and their children do not have to face climate change-induced events like droughts or heavy rains regularly. Individuals can contribute to solve this crucial crisis, but they need the correct boundary conditions in order to act the way which is the correct one, and this can clearly be only an environmentally friendly, sustainable way. And it's your duty, if you're a political decision maker, to set these conditions, no matter what party you belong to and no matter if there are elections to come. Be courageous. On the other hand, it is you, meaning the people who live here, who have to stand behind decisions that are necessary, although they might not seem comfortable at a first glance. We have a lot to gain. And maybe I'd like to ask some of you who came today by bike. So obviously, who came by car? So are there reasons why people prefer the car instead of cycling, for instance? Yeah, exactly. Safety. Safety is a really good topic here, because the most of the surroundings villages are only in a 2 to 5 miles distance. So, and this can easily be reached in 10 to 25 minute cycle. Even Colchester might be reached in less than an hour. But when I arrived yesterday in Mislay, I walked to Heath Road in Bradfield. It's roughly 2.5 miles from the train station. So there was partly proper infrastructure, but most of the time no proper infrastructure, neither for pedestrians nor for cyclists. So maybe one last remark into the direction of political decision makers. If you want to reduce CO2 emissions caused by traffic, you need to give advantage to mobility forms which are less CO2 intense than the car. So you need infrastructure for public transportation, you need comfortable pavements and cycling infrastructure. So if you seed a road for cars, you reap cars. if you see a bike lane, you'll read bicycles. So I'm coming to an end. If you would like to talk to me or have other ideas how we can reinforce the climate protection in rather rural areas, I'd be very happy to welcome you at the Pace stall, which is just a few meters, as mentioned before. And thanks again to all the people who organized this fantastic event and for giving me the opportunity to present the Klimabonus. Also a big thanks to all other speakers and exhibitors who also presented or still present really good concepts. And of course, thank you all for coming and listening. Enjoy the day with all these nice people here. Transport the messages. We all can make a change. Let's start right now. Finally, I'd warmly invite you to our beautiful region, which is especially famous for its hiking routes. So if you're interested in this, come to Germany, to Burgwald-Eder-Bergland. And thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, Mike, M-A-I-K, I think, Mike, yeah?
Huh?
So, great.
Thank you.
Mike is spoken in English. His first language is German, and I think. So that's amazing, isn't it, that we should have a German speaker giving us such great English so we can understand things in the same way. So thank you very much indeed, Mike, for coming all this way and explaining that things are going on in Germany similar to here in Manningtree.